Ladies and gentlemen, we are back in the tent today with Wendy Lea, CEO of GetSatisfaction. Wendy, thank you for making time and welcome to the tent. I hope you're comfortable.
The tent.
Yes, the tent.
Yes.
By the way, I can tell you really quickly how the idea came about.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So I'm in Dubai for Startup Weekend, judging and mentoring, and 400 or 600 people had signed up, and it was my first trip to the Middle East, so I wanted to meet everybody. So
Right.
I did 20-minute office hours with 67 teams in a tent that they had set up for people to sleep in. And it was funny because a lot of the girls in hijab said, I can't get in the tent with you. And I will never forget this moment. There's a girl there who looked around. She's like, my father wouldn't approve. And then she jumped in it. And after she's like, that's the coolest thing I've ever done. And so,
well, maybe this will be the coolest thing I've ever done. Is be in the tent with you.
I can tell you, I don't know what it is, the fact that you've taken off your shoes or sitting on the floor or drinking tea.
Yeah.
The conversations are pretty cool and
That's
the
nice.
stories are cool. So welcome. Thank you for making time. We want to talk a little bit about who's Wendy, where did Wendy come from, and obviously GetSatisfaction, because we do want to obviously help evangelize your product as the 400 million people in the Middle East are starting to use the internet and play games and chat and comment and discuss. So anyway, so tell us a little about yourself, your background, and how you ended up as CEO of GetSatisfaction.
Nice. Well, I was born and raised in Mississippi,
Yep.
The oldest of 4 children. I always wanted to lead things and be in charge of things, and you could ask my siblings and my mom and dad about that. But very early got the entrepreneurial bug, although I must say I didn't call it that so much. I just wanted to run a business, and I didn't think about entrepreneurship in the way we think about it these days. But I had a chance after working for a big company for a while, which also was a great experience, to jump out of that and join a very small company, completely owned by one guy, bootstrapped.
And what was it?
It was called Aclivis Corporation, and so they were a training company. Huh. And here I came from this, very big corporate environment. I'd been there, 3 or 4 years, had a big team, several offices, a company car, all those things. And I thought, this is not it for me. And I had not even turned 30 yet. Mm-hmm. And I gave up that kind of stability and my company car and my title and my secretaries, even at that young. And I said, I want to go do something different. And I was thinking, again, I wasn't thinking about ruling the world or owning the world. I was really thinking about what made my heart sing.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, where I was amazed at how relationships get developed between individuals and the people they were serving, right? I was I was fascinated with that dynamic. And that was before it was called CRM, because that wasn't a technology statement, that was an interpersonal statement. Long story short, at 29, I joined this small company in Dallas called Aclivis, learned a lot there, learned about technology there, learned about relationships between people and companies and products and services. And I've been doing that or some form of that ever since. Huh. So that was, I learned at the feet of a bootstrap, big-brained guy that intimidated the heck out of me. But every time I was with him, I felt like, oh my God, I got to be him. Yep. But I couldn't be him, so I had to be me. Yep. And that turned the corner for me, leaving that big company, working for him, watching the mystery of his entrepreneurship, and it fascinated me. And then I left him, which is very sad. He was not very happy about that. After 7 years, though, I was his student for 7 years. So we grew it from little of like 500,000 to 12 million, bootstrapped. And then I said, I want to go do this on my own now. And I actually left the U.S. and went to Europe to do that very thing.
And where'd you go?
I went to the UK, and I joined a small team that did similar stuff, but again, then I was part of it on my own. And we grew that business, we grew it organically and by acquisition, and then we were acquired by Siebel Systems in '99. We owned that business 100%. It was a very significant exit for us. We never thought about exiting. That was kind of that was jargon, weird words for us. We only thought about customer relationships.
And by the way, how many deals happen where it's 100% ownership. Like
It's
very rare.
now what I know
Today
now that I'm
exist.
cool in Silicon Valley, right? I had no clue about
You're a
all this
unicorn.
stuff. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Well, of course we own this business. Now there were 7 of us who owned it. It was a $50 million business. We sold it for $300. It was a stock deal.
That's awesome.
And from there, new opportunities were created.
That's awesome.
However, I never kind of left that stream of consciousness relative to relationships between individuals and companies and customers. So I've been in that business for 30 years.
Wow.
I'm going on 30 years. That's a long time.
That's awesome.
And I've seen it change a lot.
And so then how did you end up here at GetSatisfaction?
Well, it's interesting because after we were acquired by Siebel, I was completely honored to work there because I had never worked at a software company. I had only consulted to them.
Yep.
So this was cool. Big software company. I got to go around and speak and be with customers. I learned a lot. And then I left them after a couple of years and went to Boulder. And while in Boulder, I learned about venture capital.
That's funny.
And about the kind of things we call startups now, entrepreneurs. I mean, think about that. I had no clue. In fact, I remember, this is a funny story. I remember, why would I know a venture capitalist? My customers were IBM, Cisco, Sun, Microsoft, Oracle, the largest companies in the world, right? So I remember going to Boulder. Now I'm independently, financially independent. I've got my mind open to all these things. And I meet Brad Feld, right?
Convenient.
Awesome,
right?
Introduced to me by another friend, a mutual friend, and I sit down with him. I said, now Brad, tell me again what you do. I swear I had no clue. He goes, now Wendy, he tried to explain it. I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me, but I kept thinking, and these businesses lose money forever, maybe? That is how naive I was. If you're bootstrapped and you build something from scratch and you're selling engagements around to big companies, you don't think of like take a venture round, see how far that goes, raise another 100 million. But he was so good to me. He just took me under his wing and taught me his industry, not the financial angle of it, but what he looks for. He coached me, as did his team, like Seth and Jason, the whole team. They were so good to me. And then I got my hands dirty in that world, and I couldn't get out. It was like a spider web of addiction.
Yeah.
Right? I just wanted to be in it all the time. And so I was really providing my EIR services free because I didn't need the money and nor did I even know what to ask for, frankly. So I was like, okay, let me just help. But those were tough years. That was 2002, and so there was a lot of cleanup. He was with Mobius then, not with Foundry. He didn't have his own fund at the time. But I learned so much, and while there, I got the bug, and I said, things are changing. There's this social technologies, there's what I know, there's this venture-backed stuff. I really want to go find a business that I can fall in love with quickly, that's current and relevant, but leans into what I have done in the past. And that was GetSatisfaction. It was like a divine inspiration that I got a chance to meet through Dave McClure and Jeff Clavier. I got to meet Thor, Lane, and Amy, the founders of GetSatisfaction. One of the luckiest days of my life.
And that's actually relatively rare, where a team's looking for someone to come on board. Was that the original intention?
Good question. I don't know that they were. It was serendipity, and I'm not trying to be clever, because as it turned out, they were looking for some help, but I don't think they'd gotten to the point that helped equaled a new CEO. That helped equal that. I think that maybe had been discussed at a board level, but they weren't recruiting. They weren't in an official search. So my timing, I was living on the peninsula, not in the city at the time, and I had some cred because of Brad and Jeff, and I'd done some angel investing, not well, but I was doing some because I was learning that way. It was like my own little entrepreneurial MBA, right? And so we got connected, and I remember meeting Lane and Thor the first time, and it was in South Park, and I'm like, wow, this is all very cool and interesting. When they described the vision of GetSatisfaction, it just,
You were satisfied?
I was like completely fell in love. Like nothing they could have told me about the business or the existing state would have swayed me from not going there. Nothing. And by the way, there's a story in that because it's never as good as it looks. That's the way business runs. But you know, when you fall in love, you fall in love, and now 52 months later, I'm still here working.
Wow.
12 to 15 hours a day, building out the potential of a business that I see very grand.
Yeah.
I don't see it as a feature, I don't see it as a site, I see it as the way companies and customers should be working together, anytime, any place. And so I'm going for it. And of course it's been hard, but it's also been exciting.
And so what has been hard? Like which part of it specifically?
Oh, you know, the hard part, this is a very important question. Now, because my background is CRM, but also change management and process, helping companies connect more deliberately and directly with their customers in segments, wherever they are.
Yeah.
So that could be through partnerships or through selling or through whatever kind of selling. So that's my background. So what's been hard is that I'm not a technology person, nor am I a product person, nor did I have the experience probably required on the business model of freemium. Now, all of that fascinated me, and I have the right kind of capacity and brain to learn, but I think that was a hard part. I made assumptions around the skill sets of the existing team. We had 8 people, 3 of them were founders, no customers, and no capital in the bank. Just saying.
Wow.
Just a few things.
Sounds like fun. Sounds like fun.
Okay then.
Right.
And but I was fearless, and sometimes that, you know, I was fearless maybe based on being too naive to know the existing state, but that's a good thing, because that's what entrepreneurship is about, more hope than fear, right? The balance of hope and fear. Very hopeful, low fear, and in my case, because of my age, I'm a mature person. I'm about to have my 60th birthday very soon, yeah.
Wow.
And so I just okay, go for it, right? It's kind of like the youth and the wisdom of being this age. You're like, okay, either way, you know, begin again with grace. So I think the product deficiency has been hard. Finding folks that could collaborate with us on building this out. And then making sure we had the right engineers, because recruiting is not easy. If you're in San Francisco, this is Ruby, so you know what that's like. So I had so much to learn, and I needed Thor and Lane to just be with me every minute. And then they decided to move on to new things. And I don't think I would, if I'd known that they were going to be moving on to new things, although what they moved on to is awesome, I don't think I would have had the courage to kind of jump in and fall in love. Do you know what I mean? It's just, then I was kind of there. So that was hard. Not impossible, but it was hard.
And so how big is the team now?
We have 52 people.
And how many customers?
We have 3,000 paying customers, and 250 of those are very large companies, and the rest are a wide range of early stage startups to small businesses like 250 employees or less. But you know, the product has really come a long way, and of course I didn't make that happen. Other people kind of followed a product vision that we had, but it's still been a lot. So
in between, was there that one moment where wow, we're actually doing this, and that one moment where okay, we're on the right track? And
you know, that's a great question. Actually, there were several, but the first moment was just having the self-serve model produce anything. Like I remember the first $300 a month. I'm like, wow.
Recurring revenue.
Right. Yeah. MRR. I really understand what that means. I'm an operator, right? I'm like, hell yeah. Okay, if it'll do that, then why can't we do more? So I remember that, but there was a lot of mystery to that to me, right? Because optimizing that channel was something very new to me, and free to paid, and then, but that was a moment. I'm like, okay. The second moment was when I followed an instinct. There were many large customers too, but I just liked the fact that money came in the door. That felt good. And not just a big company, not just a contract, right? Because I knew we could do that. I just wanted to make all those channels work. The other thing that supported the vision they had, Lane and Thor and Amy and myself, is that when Facebook started spinning up, and Mark and the team actually had a product inside Facebook where businesses could interact with their customers, that was huge. When I saw that going down, because when we started, Facebook had 150 million users and no product that a business could organize around, right? I thought, we have to be there. And I'm like, people looked at me like, Wendy, we don't have engineers to do that. I mean, what? We don't, Facebook's API, that's screwed up. We don't know. We cannot, that would just drive our focus crazy. We can't do it. I'm like, no, we have to. You don't understand. And I was like, you don't understand, we have to. So, but we couldn't because we didn't have the product, we didn't have funding, we had the square root of not much to make this happen. But I stood true to what I understood about partnering. Is that I knew we had to get inside Facebook to allow companies that would work with us to be where their customers were inside there. That conversation hub seemed very important to me, so I pushed to that. I worked with Involver to get that done with Raheem and his team. They're awesome. Because I couldn't do it on my own, so that was a partnership that mattered to show up, not just in the timeline, but in that application. Yeah. And then the other instinct, like magic moment for me, was just demanding that our team integrate with CRM tools, service and support tools like Zendesk and Service Cloud. And the team was not interested in being that, right? They didn't want to be a help desk system. And I understood that because we do a different thing, right? But in my mind's eye, I understood whole products. And I knew over time that being part of those systems that were essential would be important. And by the way, that's been important to us, although now there's a co-opetition around that.
Co-opetition, I love that word.
Yeah, you're supposed to be interviewing me. I'm talking too much.
No, but this is great because I was just going to ask you, co-opetition.
Yeah, well, so, when markets move, they're a market like social solutions, marketing, service, or whatever. There are other assets that are sitting around being used by companies, right? So if you're creating a segment, although Lithium was before us in community platforms, that's what we are, right? Sure. But if you're doing that differently, if you're disrupting Lithium as Salesforce disrupted Siebel. Yep. So remember, I have that playbook, right? Now they disrupted it not around a product, but about a delivery model, on-prem versus SaaS, right? Got it? So I kind of saw GetSatisfaction as a clear disruptor in community, but an outside-in disruptor based on, SEO of conversations and you and I finding help that way and not having to have a tab to go to the community, which is a forum, which is crap, right? So the truth of the matter is, I knew that initially, for certain use cases, that some companies would see that a trouble ticketing service was absolutely a necessity. And I didn't want to move us in that direction, nor did our founders, right? Because we wanted to stay unique in our ability to serve up, be a content engine, right? But so we partnered with them. But as it turns out, inside trouble ticketing help desk systems, there are typically forum assets. That perform very traditionally as forums do. There's nothing wrong with them, we just do it differently. But so I knew I had to be part of that scheme. At the same time, I knew over time there would be sweet competition. So that is co-opetition in its purest sense, right? I am partnering with that feature set because it makes up a whole solution that certain customers will want, while I am also recognizing that I'm disrupting the communication approach that they are, the traditional communication approach that they are they are putting forward.
Right.
So you see that? It's interesting.
I love it.
Because there's always a tipping point. So let's be specific. Salesforce now, Service Cloud, they are announcing their community product through Chatter, but also connected to their case management assets. You say, well, my God, that means your business is over. No, that means that he is supporting the concept of community being important to companies of all sizes, and that we are then doing both, competing with them in some deals. One, a big one that we won against Salesforce. And then on the other hand, many of our customers that are B2B integrate GetSatisfaction into their case management tool. So Mickle's the same way. I mean, with Zendesk, love those guys. I mean, that was the first integration point we had, thanks to Lane and Thor. But I mean, you just know that that's how businesses shift and grow and morph. And then it comes down to, I'm a best-in-class community provider, and we have a strategy around that against Jive and Lithium. And then I'm a sweet competitor with forums as perceived as part of something else. Right? Does that make sense?
I love it. That's I think my favorite is the word of the month.
Yeah, well, and there's lots of books written on this, so this is not an original concept of mine.
I have to find
it's
the book.
very important, and I'll give it to you because it's
absolutely.
very important for startups. And I think, you know, when you're starting a company, you think, yay, well, there's nothing like me, and I'm the best, and I'm going to solve all the problems. Well, that's just stupid. You're not, right? But you have to watch market movements. Let's go back to another example, because let's talk about getting inside Facebook. This is a great example. So remember when that category of social marketing platforms started, so it was Vitru and Buddy Media and Involver and Wildfire, remember?
Yeah.
I remember when there was no category called that, right? And there was these players that got in it. They came from a little bit of a different direction, right? It's different from listening. It was a CMS on the fan page. Well, that's cool, but now they're all gone. They've been consumed by something else.
Yeah.
Not because they weren't good companies, it's just others saw that asset. So that's the same, I think, as a CEO with someone with experience like me, you have to look that way. I mean, you have to look at that. You have to be considerate about the strategy required as you're going through your own growth curve.
Interesting.
Okay, I'll have a tea now.
Yeah. So along the way, also, I mean, you have your expertise, but let's talk about fundraising.
Oh, it's been so hard.
Did
Did you know that was the case, or were you just laughing because it's hard for all
No,
of
because
us?
I just think it's, I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm a cynic. I think fundraising is kind of luck, timing, bandwagon. Like I literally, I don't know. I mean, not to knock any VCs, but I think it's
Oh, well, we
being
love
the
them.
right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And just getting a couple of people to syndicate a deal, and you know, again, I've heard some horror stories, but.
Well, I was naive about this too.
Yeah.
So remember, I'm a bootstrapped entrepreneur who made money a different way. I won't call it old-fashioned, but I'll just say it's a different way, right? Customers financed our business, and they paid a lot to do it. So that was another naive point for me, although Brad, he taught me a lot, and I just didn't think it would be as challenging as it was. Not tricky, just challenging. So for me, as a thought leader, market-making kind of person,
Yep.
you know, I had some advantages in that way, but I also had some disadvantages, and I just kind of glossed over those, like just not having made money for a VC, not being one of those entrepreneurs, right? I can't change that. I didn't make those people money, right? I want to make them money this time, but I didn't make them before. Also, learning how to tell the story in a way that had an investment basis, not just a passionate, motivational market basis, right? That I had to learn a lot about that.
And so you guys have, how much have you guys raised?
We've invested capital, 20 million all in, so a very small amount considering what SaaS businesses require over time.
Sure.
But it's still, I mean, each of those experiences has been humbling for me as a grown-up.
And so
It's been humbling.
where do you see GetSatisfaction going next? What's like?
Where would we go next is we would, to build out the potential of the company, which is around, you know, company-customer relationships and really being part of a customer experience strategy, we will do some acquisitions. That's always been in my mind. I mean, I never thought like building one feature at a time. Now, maybe that's because I don't have that background. So let's take that as a point. But I could see, remember, I come from a CRM world, and so the largest CRM companies in the world, like Siebel and Salesforce, grew through acquisition. So I don't mean just acqui-hires, but I mean real capability. So we have a roadmap now of the pieces both that we're building and that we need. And so we'll go raise money to do that. And those will be, and we'll do kind of a roll-up thing, right? Does that make sense? Are you laughing because you don't think I can? Or
No, I'm laughing because like it's this necessary evil. Like, okay, we want to do this, we have to raise more money, and then.
Well, that's right.
You know, it to me.
But I feel more calm about that than I used to, right? I had a lot of my own psychology to work through on this raising money, right? It's funny how I could almost lose my house, and that didn't stress me out as much as disappointing outside investors. That's a personal psychology thing.
Well, it's also a fiduciary duty that you have. I mean, you lose your house, then I guess you'll be living.
You figure it out.
Yeah, you'll figure it out.
No, good point.
And so, like, for
there's a pragmatic fiduciary thing, but there's also a personal psychology thing, right? Don't want to disappoint. It's a Southern thing.
Yeah.
Can I just say?
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is really funny, but Southern mentality is a lot like Middle Eastern mentality for some reason. I find
really?
Yeah, like when I talk to people from Texas or like the southern states, incidentally my wife was born in Alabama, she's Iranian, but it's funny because when I talk to Southern people, like there's some really funny similarities between Hispanic culture, Southern culture, and Middle Eastern culture. I don't know what it is, but and I know what you mean as far as this.
Well, we're very heart-based. It's a very guttural kind
that's
of emotional, kinesthetic thing, much more than just a brainiac thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Okay, so we do storytelling. So, and you've been telling stories, but I mentioned a couple topics that we kind of have as our curriculum. So, ideally, we'd like you to tell a story about one part of this experience that you've never told before, and that really embodies something as far as, you know, building a company, building relationships, competition, you know, a personal experience. We want to add a human element to something that someone needs to learn to implement in their own business.
Well, I'd like to talk, I think the story would be around talent. Not so much go to market, because in my view, good relationships make good business, and that applies to employees as well as customers as well as investors. So I am that girl. So the story I would tell is hiring a young guy that I had worked with previously, that I was completely enamored with. Because I'd worked with him. No, not a marketing guy.
Okay.
And he had not been the marketing guy at some other well-known place, but I knew his creative chops. I knew his ability to act, to make stuff happen on a small budget. So he was like perfect. And I actually got him to move here from the East Coast. And it was, I didn't think of it as a coup. I thought of it as a perfect fit, and he was just that perfect combination of snarky and creative and action oriented, and I mean, I knew culturally he would really bring the right juice at a time I needed that, because there's a female thing, there's an age thing, there's all these things, and I felt vulnerable to that, right? So I convinced him to come join us and to move his family here, which was a big step.
And do you think that it was because he, like you, found love with GetSatisfaction, or was it because he, I don't want to say, well, he believed in you, or? I
think a combination. I mean, I think he was absolutely enamored with the business, as was I, but he also trusted me, and he wanted to follow me, and this is like coming to San Francisco. I mean, think about that. I'm on the East Coast, and I'm kind of in a small area, and you're going to come to Mecca, San Francisco. Anyway, the story, though, is a difficult one, because I do the build-up to let you know how important this was to me. And then this individual chose to leave. And
quickly, or
pretty quickly. And it was at the point we were raising another round. Yeah. And so I was just emotionally disappointed and confused, and having to manage this relationship with a new investor, which, by the way, came from a place, I mean, I knew the guy. He wasn't a stranger. To your point, sometimes it just all works out, and he really believed in the business, and I'd known him before, so I had that kind of personal mojo going. And then this disappointing thing happened. And it was really hard for me to reconcile relationship-wise, right? I was not able to parse out all the strands. In other words, I took it personally. I was not able to, and it was based on some confusion that I created. So of course I had an accountability and responsibility for it, but it was really hard. And it really set me back, just trying to figure out the dynamic, what I did to create it, the dynamic with the investor. I mean, it's not like one of those things you say, oh, no problem. So I would say to entrepreneurs that are building a vision around a product or a service, you know, the team, the intricacies of this team thing, you know, people talk about it, but it's really, really a critical, essential part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're friends, and he ended up doing work even with our founders because they got to know each other. So I kind of feel responsible for that, and that was a cool thing, but really was hard. Because the things that happened after that, it just took us back, right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't have his kind of wizardry, right? And I needed it.
And you, as the CEO, are supposed to be in control of these things, and
I was not.
And you're not.
Let me just say this, and we could end on this.
Yeah.
Control is an illusion. I say this often, and I mean it. And for someone my age to say it, you know it's true. Because I'm not using jargon just for the sake of being clever on a video.
I believe it.
So control is an illusion, but the fact is you have to be sensitive and pay attention to all those dynamics. And it's so easy to lose the plot, like especially when you're raising money and you got to make all that happen, and you're not paying attention to the reaction of other people. You're making assumptions. You shouldn't do that. So that's a big story for me. And it changed a lot of the way I operated. And for a while, I was uncomfortable being vulnerable because
you're not supposed to be, like, you're supposed to be in charge.
I'm like, what? I don't know what to do now. I mean, I feel like it's not even, maybe it kind of eked into trust, I'm not sure, but it took me a while.
And then how'd you get out of it?
Well, you just get out of it, don't you? If you're a warrior, you put on your face paint.
Keep on trucking, right?
Like, what are you going to do? Go home and be sad? I mean, you do that, but you have to begin again.
Was there ever a moment where you're just like, okay?
Yeah, of course.
Maybe
you know, I was just thinking, God, how did I miss that? The thing is, how did I miss that? I allowed myself to feel so abandoned, and of course
did you miss it, or did you see it and then try to, like, bury it?
I probably, of course, have good instincts. So I'm sure I saw it and I buried it because I was focused on other things, and that was my excuse. Well, I can't handle that now, so just make that work. But it pulled up all the wrong feelings for me karmically, right? Because this has happened to me personally, and so it's happened in business, and like, what? Now you see him, now you don't? It was weird.
That is weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm bad at all this stuff too.
Well, no, you're so focused on something, you just don't want that to be exposed.
Maybe this is partially why I never went that route, and I never wanted to do corporate, and I don't know, even like running a company, like I wear my heart on my sleeve, and it's very difficult for me to separate emotions and show business and show friends. So
yeah, I represent that well. And it's really hard.
Maybe you can mentor me a little bit.
Well, that's another story. That's another interview.
Yeah. So Wendy, thank you for making time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You're also supporting us on our No Panels effort, which I don't know. I've been to hundreds of conferences, and
I'm so tired of panels.
They're lame. Literally lame.
Yes.
And so now, I don't know if we have almost 50 experts to 100 entrepreneurs. So the idea is 15 to 20 coffee meetings in one day, and really people who are already at that stage where they need mentorship, advice.
Right.
So I want to thank you for that.
My pleasure.
And then moving forward, like I said, we're building this accelerator. So in October we'll have 8 to 10 teams here from the Middle East, one from each country that we're going to visit. Would love to get you involved, and also, again, thank you for making time. I reading your story and hearing about what you're doing and all this has been inspiring to me, because I think I sympathize with these struggles and these emotional moments. Yeah. So, I want to thank you again, and it was great to have you in the tent, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Okay. Ciao.
Peace.
Yeah.